messaging or?
All right. Well, we are live now because I missed the intro. How is everyone doing? Give us one moment and we will play this intro. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that brief snippet right when we started there. But my name is Quinten Krzysko. I am joined by Steve Letizia. You might know him on Twitter as @CFCBears. Steve, how are you doing this fine evening?
I'm doing great. Excited to talk offensive tackles. Excited to talk the big guys in the trenches. You know, obviously it's a position that the Bears are almost certainly going to be drafting. So, yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, and as you said, we're here to talk about the offensive tackles today. This is one that is very pertinent to the Bears, and we have a lot of names here. So we're just going to jump right in on it. Now, first name we got here, Josh Simmons. Steve, what are your thoughts on Josh Simmons?
Yeah, I like Josh Simmons a lot. He's an interesting one because, he was injured this year. So we only saw him about 5-6 games this year. His tape last year had a lot of flashes in it. In 2023, had a lot of flashes, but a lot of, up and down. A lot of flashes, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. And then he came out this year, and then those 5-6 games looked like the best tackle in college football, at least one of the best tackles in college football. It certainly has that argument. But then he got injured, and the games he did play, he wasn't playing against necessarily the greatest competition. You had like Western Michigan was on their schedule. Marshall was on their schedule.
The Iowa game was awesome.
The Iowa game,
incredible in that game.
Looked incredible, and Iowa is a Big Ten team, but they don't have a lot of pass rushers on that team.
Right.
But that's that. But if you just go based on the tape, I think you could make the argument that he is the number one offensive tackle in this class. He's not my offensive tackle in the class, but he's my number 2. So he's very, very close. But what you like about him is just the full profile, the athleticism that he has, just how smooth his pass sets are. He's got NFL left tackle feet. Like that's the first thing that pops up, to just be able to mirror defenders and stay in front of them. He's got the length that you want. He uses his hands pretty well. Still a little more room to grow there, but for a college guy, I think that's a plus for him. And then with the athleticism, the sky's the limit. So what he showed this year, if he would have carried that on for the rest of the year and didn't get injured, I think he would have been probably offensive tackle one in the class. So there's a lot to like about Josh Simmons. I'm very intrigued.
I agree with you. I mean, it's the feet pop out right away on tape. And the thing that pops out the fastest to me on his tape is it's the hips. It's the explosiveness that he is able to change his direction in just a drop of a hat. He's facing this way. Now he's facing this way. That recovery ability was so drastic to me that there were moments where I was sitting there saying, yeah, he might not be the most technically sound and he might be getting himself in a position that I don't like. But the fact that he can recover from that is everything to me. That it's something I saw with Paris Johnson at that same spot, that same left tackle spot for Ohio State a few years ago. And something that just, when I see it on tape, it instantly shoots a guy way up my board. That flexibility and recovery ability in their hips to be able to just do drastic things a person 315 pounds shouldn't be able to do. But Steve, do you think he's on the board at 10? Do you think he's a real option for the Bears?
I think he'll be on the board at 10. And we'll talk. There's a lot of guys that I have very similar to Josh Simmons. So I'm going to be saying kind of the same thing over and over again. But, when talking about what Ben Johnson is going to be wanting in his tackles, I do feel like they're going to, and this, we don't know for sure because we don't know. We think we're basing off what he did in Detroit, but he's pretty much said that this is not going to be a copy and paste. But in Detroit, they had a tendency to draft bigger offensive linemen. And Simmons is 6'5", 310, 315-ish. So I think he's a little bit smaller than what they want. So I don't know if that will be exactly kind of who they're looking for, which is, he's a hell of a prospect. The other thing that we got to take into account is Braxton Jones has played adequate at the left tackle position. So any left tackle you draft in the first round, you have to basically be sure that he's not at least not going to be worse than Braxton Jones in year one, which, say what you want about Braxton Jones, but what you're getting there as a left tackle in probably Caleb Williams' most important year. So you can't afford to kind of take a step back in year one in the hopes you eventually develop him into a franchise left tackle, because this next year is so important. So can Josh Simmons be that guy? I think he's one of a couple who maybe could at least give you Braxton Jones performance in year one, but there's no guarantee. So to me, I think while he's a fit and would work, I don't think he's going to be the pick for them in the first round.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And, you did a beautiful way to segue into the first thing we're supposed to talk about. And because I got flustered, I forgot and just went straight in the names. But we're supposed to talk about what the Bears have on their roster at offensive tackle.
Yeah.
You mentioned Braxton Jones, left tackle, Darnell Wright, right tackle. Like, they are in a spot where I think you don't really need a tackle. I'd like an upgrade from Braxton Jones. And that's not even as much about his play for me as this is availability. He has missed 4 or 5 games each of the last 2 years, like something like 10 games total the last two years. That's tough for me to stomach and say that's my starting left tackle going forward. That's my primary concern at the offensive tackle position. But Steve, let me ask you this. How much draft capital do you think the Bears could be spending or should spend at the offensive tackle position when we're talking pure offensive tackle, not guys who are moving to guard?
Right. I think they could use a first round pick at offensive tackle, at left tackle specifically. I think, Darnell Wright's obviously, the right tackle for next year and the future, but they could potentially use a pick in the first round of left tackle if, again, you think that player is going to be as good or better than Braxton Jones in year one. Like you said, the availability is a big thing. But I only think there's maybe 1 or 2 guys who kind of fit that profile in the first round. They did draft Kieran Amageji in the 3rd round last year. I think his best bet is probably inside at guard. Just kind of, I know he was a rookie coming from a small school, but what we saw, it just did not look good at left tackle.
Really? I'm surprised to hear you say that, because I thought that he showed all the traits you want at offensive tackle.
That's fair.
It was just sloppy as hell. Like, he just didn't know what he was doing.
And you've probably watched him more than I have. I'm more NFL draft, so once they're in the pros, you watch him more than I am. So I'll trust your opinion. I'll trust your evaluation there. But I think they could potentially give him some competition at that swing tackle. And then, the loser of that swing tackle position kind of shifts inside to guard. So whether that's Kieran or this guy that they draft. So I think the earliest you'd see, if they don't take one in round 1, I don't see them taking one in round 2. I think the round 2, you really want to, that means they're okay with Braxton. You're not going to get a better starter than Braxton in round 2. So they're going to go a different position. I think Kieran was pick 72, which is what they have now. Or at least he was right around there.
Yeah, something like
he
that.
Could do that 3rd round, but I think at the very least you wanted to take another chance on day 3, early day 3, maybe if you have a 4th round pick from a trade down, or maybe with 149, whatever they have, take a guy. There are some intriguing offensive tackles kind of on day 3. We can maybe get into some of them later. So I think that makes sense. It's either round 1 or like day 3. I don't see really much of an in between there.
I'm with you on that. And now when we're talking about guys who are a fit for the Bears offense at offensive tackle, and not offensive guard, not center, but offensive tackle, what are you looking for to fit Ben Johnson's offense? Like, what are the traits that you are considering important?
Yeah, like I said, we don't know exactly what they're going to be running. We just have a general idea. They could run something completely different than what Detroit ran last year. But if we're just looking at kind of what Detroit looked like on their offensive line, bigger guys, 320 plus, taller guys, even like through the interior. Interesting that I was kind of looking at their offensive line. They didn't seem to care too much about length. I mean, Penei Sewell only had like 33 and something inch arms, so it didn't seem like, I'm not saying that they don't care about length, but I think they might have lower thresholds than what we've seen maybe in the past. But you're just looking for guys. This might sound, a little simplistic, but you're looking for big guys who can move. which obviously everyone's looking for that, but that's kind of what I'm looking for. We're going to talk. I have, some guys who I think fit better than, but we'll kind of talk about all of them all. But I think guys who are taller, guys who are maybe a little bit heavier, but still have at least enough athleticism to kind of move and get on space. It's not going to be that straight, just big baller who can't really move, but they're strong. But it's also not going to be those undersized guys who are really, quick. And it's kind of like the in between of those two guys.
Yeah, I've generally kind of taken a approach with it of like, they got Penny Sewell. You had the chance to draft Penny Sewell. You were drafting Penny Sewell,
Right.
and they got there, and Taylor Decker was there as a successful offensive tackle. So, like, the way I see it, they didn't really have a preference in their guy. Like they were locked into their guys. So my approach with it is a bit more of like, I'm just looking at finding talent at offense. Like, I'm trying not to box myself into too much, just being like, this guy can play offensive tackle. That's a fit to me, because like, as long as they can, I guess I should preface that with saying that that's more of the pass game.
Yeah.
As a run blocker, I want to be able to move people. That's like, I feel like they're going to run a lot of gap concepts.
Yeah.
You got to be able to move people physically.
Yep. A lot more gap, less outside zone, gap, inside zone, kind of what I believe what we're kind of looking for.
Yeah. But now that we've gotten through those items, let's get to our second offensive tackle we want to talk about. Guy that everyone's talking about, Will Campbell out of LSU. What do you think of Will Campbell?
Love Will Campbell. Will Campbell is interesting because I'm very high on Will Campbell, as a lot of people are. But it does seem like, at least on Bears Twitter, people are kind of shying away from Will Campbell. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking that or looking into it, but I feel like he's not like the sexy pick on Bears Twitter right now. It's like getting an edge rusher or trading back and drafting Josh Simmons or Josh Conley or some of these other guys. But to me, Will Campbell is they're not far away, but Will Campbell is the offensive tackle one in this class, and I do have him as an offensive tackle. A lot of people having him moving inside, unless he has 32-inch arms. If he can even get close to 33-inch arms, I'm keeping him at offensive tackle, because everything you else you want in a profile is there. He's got the size, he's got the athleticism, he's got the hand placement. Like, the guy's just a technician with his hands, just working them independently. Just the strike, powerful strike, the placement of his strikes. He does everything really well. Sometimes he oversets a little bit. He actually has a tendency more to get beat to the inside than he does actually around the edge. But all that, is just, I think people forget with Will Campbell, because he's been kind of on the radar for a while, because he started as a true freshman at LSU, that he's some like finished product. But the guy's 21. He's a junior, a true junior. So this is not a finished product by any means. Like, he has the opportunity to get better, just as all these other guys who I believe people like say that their ceiling is so much higher, but I think Will Campbell has a really high ceiling too, and he's just scratching the surface still, because he's only been a college player for 3 years. So I really like Will Campbell. I think if he's on the board at 10, you don't overthink it and you just take him. And even if you think he's a guard, if you think he's a left guard, which I think he could play tackle, but if you think he's left guard, that fills a need too. Just take the best offensive lineman and count your blessings that he was on the board.
So I'm mostly with you there. The difference between Will Campbell and Josh Simmons for me is like Josh Simmons has an 8.09. Will Campbell has an 8.04.
Yeah.
And if Will Campbell's arms come in long enough for me, like, I'm thinking over 33, I'm like, okay, I'm moving him up. He's going to be OT1. He is the best tackle tape in this class. I don't think there's a question about that. His stuff is going to constantly come up about him and Peter Skoronski.
Yeah.
Like, it just is, because that's the most recent example of this conversation that has been had over and over for years now.
Yep.
And he's so different than Skoronski.
I think his tape is far better than Skoronski.
So do I.
Yeah, it's
like Skoronski.
I understand the comparison because the short arms left tackle, but yeah, I think he's way better.
Skoronski's feet constantly fell behind, but he was constantly able to push guys up the pocket, right? And that's what drove me nuts in his tape. I'm like, he's not winning any reps. Yeah. He's just making it work over and over and over. Whereas with Will Campbell, that's not to say, I'm not trying to rag on Peter Skoronski. Yeah. He won his fair share of reps, but it was like I was trying to see what everyone else was talking about, and that gets frustrating when you're not seeing it, right?
So been there.
with Will Campbell, I'm like, he has sweet feet, man. I mean, he mirrors guys. He stays in front of them. He keeps his pads square the line of scrimmage until he has to change them. Like, there's so much that he does so well at offensive tackle. I mean, there's a part of me that says, screw it, maybe he's like Rashawn Slater and arm lengths just don't matter, right?
Yeah.
Like, I really like him at offensive tackle a lot.
Yeah.
I am worried about him at offensive guard.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, it's fine. Just with how upright his play style is and that muscle memory is, I just don't know that that a guy can change that quickly. And that combined with his biggest strength to me is his mirror, his ability to mirror on the edge. And that is just much less valuable at offensive guard. Like he has enough anchor. Like he can anchor down, but
sure.
it's not a strength of his when I watch him. And I'm like, with that play height and your biggest strength being something that isn't that valuable at offensive guard to me, I don't know that I love him as an offensive guard. To me, if you're drafting him, you give him the chance to play offensive tackle. Like at 10 times out of 10, you need to have him try there because the thing that I guess not to be that definitive with it either, because like he is polarizing. He's hard to get a read on because every time you hear him talk, every time you see a quote from him, you're like, this dude gets it.
Yeah.
This is football character out, like as big a football character offensive lineman as you can find. You love him. You want him in your room. Like, So part of me is screaming, he's going to succeed no matter what he has to do. He's just going to find ways to get it done because that's a lot of offensive line, just finding ways to do the job.
Yeah.
But then the other part of me is like, but he's so upright. And like, I don't know if his skill set really translates to guard, but it's like, it's polarizing. I love him as a tackle though.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on all that. I do have more. Despite his arm length, I have more concerns with him inside of guard for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. I actually think he does. It's almost like he does play a little bit upright at times, but it's almost more in his like setup is upright, and then when he gets into his kick side, he actually kind of bends the knees a little bit more. Kind of a weird setup that he has, which can be very difficult to watch. But the other thing that you mentioned, I thought was just how smart he is. The guy's going to be an offensive line coach whenever his career is over. He's going to be an offensive line coach. I was listening on the Brandon Thorne, the Trench Wilford podcast, and it was just like, this guy's just, I could listen to that guy talk offensive line play all day. So I think it's just like the smarts that come with it. And I think smarts and awareness kind of gets overlooked for offensive linemen. Sometimes you want to find the biggest, strongest, most athletic guys, but it's still, it's a mental game too. And I think he's got that. So I think he's a tackle. And previously I was on another podcast a while ago and I said he was a guard all the way. I've since changed that. And now I after watching more, I'm like, no, this guy's a tackle all the way, and guard, maybe, he can move in guard. If tackle fails, you definitely going to try him at guard, but give him a chance to fail.
Yeah. No, I agree. And, it's funny how opinions evolve like that over time, right? It's like you asked me 2 months ago, or probably 2 months ago about Will Campbell. I would have said, I would have been like really skeptical about either of them because it's like I just thought he was a tweener, and it was like I don't know what to do with it. But then it's like I've watched more tape, seen more of the personality that he is, and just like it's hard not to buy into. Now, speaking of the biggest, strongest athletes, let's talk some Kelvin Banks Jr.
Ooh, I'd love to.
Because that seems like a great definition for Kelvin Banks to me. But what are your first thoughts on Kelvin Banks?
So my first thoughts on Campbell and Josh Simmons were I love him, and my first thoughts on Kelvin Banks is I do not love him. I think his projection is starting to even out a little bit. He was kind of billed as the top 10 guy early in the year, and I never saw that. And I think people are starting to catch up to that the more they watch it. And he's fallen down some rankings. I think Brugler had him at like 22 or something like that in the 20s, which is more in line with what I think he is. I will have him probably a little bit lower than that, but I don't want to get ever too down on a prospect because I've done that before in the past. You have a prospect that you don't really love, and then you kind of go too far in the other direction and say like this is a bad prospect. Because Kelvin Banks,
guilty of that.
I do that all the time, and it's the same thing the other way. You get high on a guy, and then other people aren't catching up, so you go even higher. It's a mess. But anyway, Kelvin Banks, I think he's more of that late first, even like early second round type prospect. I don't think he goes. I think he ends up going in the top 20 eventually, but yeah, the traits are there, but man, this guy is just on the ground all the time, like a lot. And that's like ever since I got into kind of doing this, that was like the first thing that I like heard about offensive line play when I started doing this years ago was like if a guy's on the ground a lot, like he's mostly going to be on the ground a lot in the pros, and that's kind of what just sticking in my mind with him. The balance just isn't there, which is weird because the guy is pretty like the other thing I struggle with him is everyone talks about the traits, and there are traits out there, but I don't think the traits are necessarily special. Like the athleticism is special, the strength is special. I don't think it's quite at that level. So if you're going to have issues with balance and technique, and you're going to be an above average athlete, I don't love that combination. I need you to be a special athlete if I'm willing to overlook some of that other stuff. And I don't think he's quite there. I think the movement skills are good. I don't want to say he's a bad athlete because that's not true at all, but they're just not to the level you'd expect for a project. So I actually have him as a guard right now, and like a day 2 guard, but I think he will probably get drafted a little higher than that.
Yeah, right now, I mean, on our board, which is it's just yours and mine grade. He's 16th on our board, and we're still missing plenty of names there.
Yeah.
Like we both have a second round grade on him, and I think, I mean, I'm higher on him than you, or than what you said, and that's all because I flipped his tape on within the first 5 plays. Said that's a guard. And then I put my guard lenses on and said, how am I'm grading him like a guard now? Because I don't think he can play tackle. I just don't think he has the balance, the foot speed. But man, he is big. He is strong. And like the first game I watched was against Georgia. I'll tell you what, he was bullying those Georgia defensive linemen all game long. And it was just like, I think he might be one of the best guards in this class.
Okay.
But I think that if you try him at tackle, he's going to fail. Like, I think it's going to be a rough time. So it becomes a weird draft eval at that point where I have a near first round grade on him, but it's positional, right? Like that's as a guard. As a tackle, I'm lower on him than that. But I just think his power and his attitude, that combination will play really well at guard in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe I need to rewatch him with those guard lenses on, because when I watched him, I was still trying to make this guy fit as a tackle, because everyone kind of said he was a tackle. So maybe watch him again with the guard lenses. But I mean, I do have a second round grade on him, so it's not like But like,
well, to be fair,
he's not. We'll get into the guards in the next podcast. He's not my highest rated guard either. So,
and to be fair, I need to watch a few more games on him too, and a few more, because the Georgia game, I think his balance issues were pretty quiet. And in the Michigan game, which I also watch, his balance issues were a lot louder. So I have like 2 very bipolar grades on his tape right now.
The Michigan game was rough,
but that Georgia game, it's stuck in my mind the way that he was dominating the trenches in that game, and it's like that upside just screams to me a little bit as a guard. But moving on to a guy who I know you've written a scouting report on already over at ontapsportsnet.com, Josh Conerly Jr. out of Oregon. Tell me about Josh Conerly.
Yeah, I see Josh Conerly and Josh Simmons very similarly. They have the same first name, but they're also like their profile is pretty similar. I have Simmons higher, but I like Conerly too, and I think he's where they were first round pick. He's a little smaller, a little shorter, probably a little lighter. He's also a redshirt sophomore, either a redshirt sophomore. No, he's actually a true junior. I take it back. So he's a little bit raw still, pretty raw still. And I think he has, struggle anchoring versus power, which is something I really, take a lot of stock in. But that being said, he never gets, beat terribly. Even when he does, like his anchor kind of lets him down a little bit. It's just that he dies slowly, is, the scouting term. Even when he does get beat, and the balance and the recovery skills that Josh Conerly has might be some of the best of all these offensive tackles we're talking about. That's really something that stood out and popped a lot on tape. But he's got good feet. He's got pretty long arms. I really like him a lot. I think he's going to fall in that same category for me, at least. If I don't know if that's exactly where they're going to go, because I think he is a prospect who I would say will not be better than Braxton Jones year 1. I think he has a higher ceiling than Braxton Jones, but I think he's going to take a year or two to really kind of find his rhythm. And I don't think the Bears are in an opportunity to kind of wait for him to develop. They need to get guys in who can play right away. So I would err towards more the safer prospects because I think there is some risk in his profile just with how raw he is and everything. But a really good player. Someone's going to get a good player. If you have a late first round pick and you have 2 offensive tackles and you can let him sit for a year, I think that would be absolutely perfect for him. Maybe even like put him in as a tight end, just to get him on the field, throughout the year.
5th block or 6th blocker out there.
Exactly. Do that with him and just get him used to everything. I think he's going to be really good, but the Bears don't have that luxury.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the first tape I flipped on Conerly, I didn't like almost at all, which was, let's see, the Ohio State game. I thought that Ohio State's D-line kind of stole his lunch money.
That was probably the worst game, yeah.
And then I watched a few more games and I came around on him. Like, it was his game against UCLA. I thought he looked outstanding as both a pass protector and a run blocker. I know there was one other I watched where it was like, okay, I'm really starting to see it now, see why this guy's getting the hype that he is. Definitely more of a finesse tackle in my mind. Like more about, like you said, the athletic, the footwork, the body movement ability is really nice with him. He does I thought he showed some attitude out there as a finisher, but it wasn't as much as like, clearly I talked about how I like Kelvin Banks a lot. I like that nasty. I put probably too much value on it sometimes of like, this guy just he craves contact, right? Like, and so that was one of my questions with Conerly. I don't know how much he craves contact, but he shows enough that I'm like, okay, with the whole profile that we're talking, I've seen enough from him where it's like, yeah, that makes sense. It's like a late first round pick. And if we're being honest, these guys who hit the measurables at tackle, they don't get out of the first round. Like, he's going to go in the first round.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, guy who I see is pretty polarizing. I'm not sure your opinion on him. We haven't talked about him yet. Is Armand Membou out of Mizzou. So I guess I'll get my take out there first. Like, I am so perplexed by this guy. There are moments where it's just like he is bulldozing guys as a run blocker on combo blocks and double teams. And it's just like, okay, that's some nasty. And there are times where it's like, why don't you hit anybody? Like, it's just like, why are you standing there just watching this guy fly by you as a run blocker? His pass pro is pretty good overall, but like the run blocking is just, it's so confusing. And like, I don't know what to do with it because this physical skills are really, really impressive. But that run blocking terrifies me. But so where are your thoughts with Membou?
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. Do you have him as a tackle or guard? Because I know a lot of people kind of are split on that. I'm curious where you
So I would try him at tackle first. Because again, if a guy's run blocking worries me, I don't want him at guard.
Yeah.
Right. Like if his willingness to play into contact and be the aggressor is really in question, I worry about their ability to play guard because it's a more physical position, more physically demanding, requires that playing with power and excelling with power. And I know Mbow has power. I just don't know that he likes to play with power.
Yeah. Yeah, I have him as a tackle too. Give him a chance to fail a tackle.
He was a really nice pass protector. So like, I mean, I there were some flaws there with like his softening his inside shoulder, turning his pads too early, but like generally I thought it was all workable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I have the same concerns. I would watch one game and be like, yeah, this is a top 10 player this class. And then I'd watch another game and be like, this is a nice player, but the top 10 talk is getting out of control. So it's very bipolar tape. It kind of just depends on what games you watch. But I like him too. I tweeted the other day. I was like, I just asked people because I was generally struggling with this. Like, rank these 3 players: Simmons, Mbow, and Conerly. And people were kind of all over the board. I view all those guys. I mean, they're all different prospects. I'm not comparing the prospects. Just their overall end game evaluation is so close for me. I think Mbow is a step below Simmons and a step above Conerly. But I like him as well. I thought, like I said, up and down run blocking tape. I think he's as a pass protector, he's pretty good. He's got a guard body. Like, you look at him, he's under 6'4", 330 something pounds. So it kind of looks like a guard, but I play him at tackle. And I thought, despite
I mean, I think I think his arms came in at like 35 inches, and combined with how explosive he is to like really get into that kick step, I think he can work it.
Yeah, it was 34 inches on the dot, which is plenty long for a guard, for a tackle. I thought, like you said, I like what you said there. Like, I thought he struggled a little bit in pass protection. I thought he would lose his anchor at times, which is weird for a guy with his like profile. But it was not a strength issue; it's a technique issue. So the physical traits are there. And just coach him up a little bit. And he's another guy who's really young. I think he was either a redshirt sophomore or a true junior too. So
he's 20 right now. So
21
old, in March, I think.
So when you take that full evaluation into account, if he was a redshirt senior and he had that tape, I'd be like, okay, I mean, that's a little bit. There's an issue there, but there's little things you can clean up to help him with his anchor and help him with everything that kind of goes into it. So I like him a lot, and I think he would be a player who would be more on the Bears board, because he fits that profile that I'm kind of looking for. Doesn't necessarily have the height, but he's got the weight and he's got the athleticism. And he's, like you said, just draft good football players, and I think he is just a good football player. I don't know where you'd play him, if assuming you're not going to play him at right tackle if you're the Bears. So do you move him over to left, or do you play him, or do you start him at right guard and see what happens? I don't know.
That's the other thing. I went down a rabbit hole on him. So almost all of his snaps, like all except for maybe 10 or something, were at right tackle at Mizzou. I went to his rivals page, looked at his high school highlight tapes, all right tackle. I'm not sure if the guy's ever played on the left side.
Interesting.
So that is another kind of interesting limiting factor where I'm like, I see Dane Brugler has him as like a top 10 player. So I'm like, Dane knows, he's writing the beast. He knows about how positionally versatile a guy is. Right. But then I'm sitting here questioning it because I'm like, I've never seen him play on the left side after going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. So usually guys in high school, all these guys are all left tackles on their high school team.
Right. So, right. Now I comped him. My high end comp for him was Darnell Wright. I thought there were some parallels to the way that Wright played at Tennessee and his run blocking issues at Tennessee, as far as if anyone remembers the like infamous Ryan Poles workout with him where he almost like killed Darnell Wright to make sure he had the want to in him to go play it, be a plus run blocker in the NFL, and that's worked out. But like, I feel like you almost need a little bit of that with Mbow too. You need to find out one way or another.
Yeah. What's
the want to as a run blocker?
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
Now, next guy here, I'll let you take this one away. Is Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State.
Yeah. Love Gray Zabel. Here's the thing I was thinking about the other day, and you could make the argument, I don't know if you'd win it, but you can make the argument that North Dakota State is offensive line university. Like this program just churns out really good offensive linemen, and I think Gray Zabel has a chance to be the best out of all of them. This guy's really good. He played left tackle at North Dakota State, which is why we're talking about him in the Tackle Podcast. I think most people kind of view him on the interior, either guard or center. I don't know if really anyone has him as a tackle, but we're going to talk about him here because he played tackle in college. But I really like him. I think just watching his offensive tackle tape, his best reps came on jump sets and, play action where he could get his hands on guys early. So I think that just is a natural transition to guard or even center potentially. But yeah, when he gets his hands on you, the game's over. And the level of competition is the big knock on him. But then he went to the Senior Bowl and was maybe the best offensive lineman at the Senior Bowl, arguably, at least from what I've seen. So a lot of he's got shorter arms, even for an interior guy. But he's strong. He's athletic. He can move. He can mirror. He's the hand timing placement is pretty good for a guy who comes from a small school, and just the tenacity that he plays with, I love too. He's you talk about a guy who's mean, like he finishes guys. So that's something that you don't have to be kind of worried about. I think he's a tone setter. I actually right now have him as my number one center, but that's not set in stone. That's very much written in pencil right now. But I think he could play center. I think at least, eventually. My plan with him is start him at guard, just to kind of ease that transition going from a small school to the NFL, and then kind of maybe shift him to center later on in his career. But I think he would be an ideal target for the Bears on day 2. I think he fits what you want because he is a big guy. Let me just pull up his measurements. I got it here. where is he? Oh, he's on the interior. Sorry. Gray Zabel. 6'5", 316, 30, just over 32-inch arms. So he's got the short arms, but 6'5", 316, that's pretty good size for a guy who's coming from a smaller school. And I think you put on a little bit of weight to get to 320, and then you got a really good player.
Yeah, I mean, the second I turned on this guy's tape, I was pretty sold on him. Like, as far as like knowing that he has played all 5 positions, even if it's only 17 snaps at center, that's still 17 snaps of center experience. Played all 5 positions at North Dakota State at some point. That's a huge plus to me. It means a guy has every opportunity to get better of anybody on the roster. Like someone goes down, he has an opportunity to go get better and get experience out on the field. And like you mentioned, he is shockingly sound technically
for a small school guy. Yeah,
for a small school guy. Like, I mean, I remember Cody Mock's tape. It was like, this guy's a runaway train, but by golly, he wants to hit people. Like, that wasn't Gray Zabel. Gray Zabel wanted to hit people, but he did so. His technique was so clean. Everything felt so right. And like you said, he really capitalized on some of the stuff that was kind of more guard-like. But when you're running as much 12 personnel as North Dakota State is, and as much running scheme and pin and pull as they are, you're getting the chance to see him play an interior position essentially when you boil it all down.
Right. Yeah, and I think the other thing, like I mentioned, he went to the Senior Bowl and did really well there. But even the game, like his best game might have been playing against Colorado, which is a Power 5 school. So like I know he played, North Dakota and South Dakota and all these, but his game against Colorado might have been his best of the entire year, and that was the first game of the year.
Yeah.
So really don't have a lot of concerns about the level of competition that he faced because of that.
I think
which is really like. I mean, there are other knocks you can nitpick on him, but the biggest knock, if you read any scouting report, his first negative is going to be played at a small school, and he's kind of proven that that's not really that big of an issue.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think he would be an outstanding pick if he's there at 39. I think a lot of the mock drafts he's not even there anymore, but it'll be interesting to see where he actually goes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, next guy here out of Minnesota is Aireontae Ersery. Steve, have you gotten to watch much of him?
Yeah, I actually watched him at the end of last year, kind of my summer scout, and I liked him a lot. And I watched a little bit of his 2024, but I still need to watch more. But I liked him too. He's another big guy. I think if we're talking about guys who kind of fit like the Detroit profile, I think he fits there because he's 6'6", he's 330 pounds. But this guy can move. This guy is not like some big mauler. Like this guy might have some of the best movement skills, weight adjusted, of any of the offensive tackles in this class. Minnesota gets him a lot of, they do pin pulls, they get him out pulling. They also do outside zone, and he can actually reach blocks. He can get to the second level. He moves. I should say he moves forward really well. I love when in the run game as a run blocker, he moves forward really well. As a pass blocker, in his kick side, it's not as smooth. It's a little clunky. He doesn't have that hip flexibility that you want. He lunges a good amount, which is why we're talking about a late first at best kind of guy. I actually like him at guard as well. I think he's a little bit taller, but I think with that his lack of hip flexibility, I think makes a move to guard and inside probably his best bet. But he's not like other prospects like Kelvin Banks, where I was like, this guy is definitely a guard. I think he could play tackle in the right scheme, but I think he could play tackle, but he could be a really good guard. Whereas Will Campbell he can play tackle and might be a good guard,
Yeah.
It's a little bit different there. So I like Ersery. I think he would be another good pick on day 2. And he'd be a guy who you could put at left guard and maybe kind of gives you some insurance. If Braxton Jones gets hurt, you start him at left guard. If Braxton Jones gets hurt or doesn't play well, maybe you kick him back out and to left tackle and then fill in left guard. He gives you some options there. So I like him a lot for left guard. And I don't think he's really being talked a lot on Bears Twitter. When I see all the mock drafts, he's not really talked a lot about, but I think he's actually kind of a perfect fit for what they need.
Yeah, I think he's a really nice fit as well. I think you hit the nail on the head. My scouting report, the scheme fit says best position is likely offensive guard, but has potential to stick at offensive tackle, preferably in an inside zone based run scheme that will be getting him vertical, not horizontal. So very similar to what you just said.
I actually thought he moved pretty well horizontally.
So I thought he
You
did.
gotta go back and look at more of his 2024. As I said, that's a caveat.
It's more
but I thought he was good.
it's not as much about the movement abilities as his footwork. He just doesn't
Okay,
know what the hell he's doing.
that's fair.
His run blocking footwork is borderline offensive at times.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like he can run block, but he's not any good at it right now. Like the tools are there for him to be a good run blocker, but I don't think he's ever been coached up fully on it. And it's pretty evident in my mind, or at least from what I watched, it was like just his feet on horizontal blocks. He tends to run ahead of the blocks, and then guys undercut him constantly.
Mhm.
And like on the vertical stuff, it was much less of an issue, and he had good timing on reaching the second level on combo blocks like inside zone or even duo stuff. It was like I could see the vision a lot more. Whereas the horizontal stuff, it just felt like guys were consistently making life really hard on him, and it wasn't because of poor foot speed. It was just he was out of position.
That makes a lot of sense because that's kind of what I was talking about. You know, just the pure movement skills itself, just the athleticism and everything. But yeah, the footwork could definitely get cleaned up a little bit.
Now, I mean, as far as like, I liked a lot of what I saw. There were, I'll tell you what game stresses me out about Ersery is UCLA. When I see Carson Schwetzinger two gapping Aireontae Ersery, who he gives up 100 pounds against, and I'm just like, just punch him.
Yeah. That was the thing. I felt like he wasn't as much as a people mover as I wanted him to be, given his profile. Not to say that he didn't do it. It's just you see this, you just take one look at him, and you're like, oh my god, this guy's gonna just move people, and he did at times, but not as much as you really want him to.
It was a lot of hand placement stuff. His hands are just kind of all over the place, consistently wide, late. But I think there's a lot to work with there because, like you said, he has some really impressive movement skills for his size, and the power is clear as day when he's right. When he's
right,
when he's in the right position, he just dominates people. So like, he's a really interesting name to watch. I think I have a second round grade on him. Like I think that's about where he belongs.
I think so too.
All right. Now, next guy up is I'll start this one off. Is Emery Jones.
I haven't watched him that much, so I'm going to defer to you.
And so this roots back to my obsession with angry people playing offensive guard. If there is one player in this class that I think would, I don't think Brandon Thorne's that high on him, but that I think would make Brandon Thorne proud of punishing jumpers. It's Emery Jones Jr. because he just wants to hurt you. Like, I really, and he plays tackle right now. I think he is a guard. Like, he has the physical traits to stay at tackle. I think like the athleticism is there, but I don't think the eye discipline, the ability to be patient is completely there. He reminds me of Tyler Smith out of Tulsa a few years back who went to the Cowboys, where it's like he had all the traits to play tackle. The Cowboys said, we're just gonna leave you at guard. You're doing pretty good at guard. Your mentality really fits at guard. That's how I feel about Emery Jones. I think it's really high praise. I do think Smith was a really strong athlete. So we'll see where Emery Jones comes in with that. Mm-hmm. And that might impact where I have him right now. I'm probably one of the higher names out there in Emery Jones right now. And it's just a lot of it is just because he is willing to punch you right in the mouth and he has the athletic traits to work with, where if I were an offensive line coach and I see this guy's effort on the field plus his physical traits, I'm saying they're going, give me him. Like, that guy is working his ass off and that guy has everything I want physically. So I don't see how he gets out of the second round when I think about it that way. But what did you see?
Yeah, so again, I have to watch more of him. Most of what I've watched of him is when I was watching not so much Will Campbell, but Miles Frazier, who we'll talk about in the guard podcast, who I'm actually very, very high on. But it was kind of just watching the two of them next to each other. What I saw, I saw a lot of what you saw, the athletic traits, obviously the length really stands out. He doesn't necessarily use it very well, but you can see he's got vines for arms. So that really definitely stands out, the athleticism. I thought it was very sloppy from what I saw. But like you said, you're not drafting him for kind of the guy who he is now. You're drafting him because he's got all the traits that you want. He's a traits-based evaluation. So I think that makes sense to take trait-based evaluation guys on day 2, early on second round, and kind of just hope you can get him with your offensive line coach and he can kind of work up and clean up all the rough edges that he has and just make sure and get him to where he needs to be. When I watched him, I was watching him as an offensive tackle. And like you said earlier, there is a difference there when you're watching a guy, and if you're just watching him as only as one position, you might miss some things that might translate better to other positions. I've definitely gone back and watched other guys and watched them with a different lens, and it changes your entire evaluation. So I need to do that still with him because I thought he was an offensive tackle all the way. But again, now based on your evaluation, I want to go back and look. But yeah, he's got decent size, 6'5", 315, 30, almost 35-inch arms is what he measured at. Almost 83-inch wingspan. So there's a lot to like there. I just need to watch more. But I'm curious. What do you see? Do you think the Bears would be interested? Do you think the Bears would take him with that one of their second round picks?
I think the Bears should be interested in him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he fits what we know about Ryan Poles and what he likes in offensive linemen. I see it as a grittiness. He really likes a grittiness and a attitude almost in some guys. And I think that he fits that to a T. I don't know of any off-field issues with him. I like the way that it's weird. This might almost be like a little bit like judgmental, but sometimes when you watch a guy's tape and the way they play, you can kind of tell like they might be a loose cannon off the field.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost the vibe you get from Emery Jones.
Yes, actually, for sure.
But I don't know of anything. So as long as there's nothing there, I think he should absolutely be in consideration, maybe a trade down from 41 situation. Okay. And if he's, I'm the only person who I've seen who has a second round grade on this guy. If he's there in the third and you're still looking for a guard, I think that's a no brainer. I think that is this guy you're not finding this type of talent in the third round physically.
Yeah. I feel like I've been telling multiple people that I'm going to watch Emery Jones next, and I just haven't gotten around to it. So I'm actually going to watch him next.
Yeah, and you're right. He's not clean. He's not technically sound. He's not clean. He's kind of a wreck. And it's so weird. I feel like every time I've watched LSU's O-line, they just seem like a hot mess half the game. But they're good individually. Right. Some of them are doing really good things, but they're so disjointed at times.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but next guy up, and I'll let you take the lead on this one, is Jonah Savaiinaea out of Arizona. I hope I pronounced that right, but Steve, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I think you pronounced it right. I don't know for sure, but I think you got it. But I really like Savaiinaea. I've liked him since the summer. In my summer scouting, he really jumped on the tape, and I was very high on him, and I'm still high on him. It seems like the consensus is soured on him a little bit, which I don't really understand because he put together pretty good tape this year. Arizona moved him to left tackle, and I thought his left tackle tape was not as good as his right tackle tape. And he's played right guard in the past. So that is kind of an interesting caveat with him. I'll just kind of start there. I think he's kind of a right side only guy because it sometimes, guys move to the other side and they, it looks pretty similar, but there was a noticeable difference on the left side. So I want to put him on the right side, but I really liked his tape. I think he has an odd body type where he looks like a guard, but going into the year, I thought he could stick at tackle. People have said he's got short arms. I know the PFF scout report says he's got well below average arms, but then he went to the Senior Bowl and he was 34 and 5/8 inch arms, so one of the longest arms of the Senior Bowl. It doesn't always show on tape, but the guy he has a really strong punch, is what I noticed, and good timing and good placement with it. And you can see a noticeable jolt, when he punches guys, it knocks him off balance. And then he's got gigantic hands. So once he gets his hands on you, the rep is over. So I think he's a really good pass protector. He's a guy, when you look at him, again, kind of like Ersery, is you look at this guy, and you're like, this guy is going to be a mauler in the run game. And he's absolutely not, which is very frustrating. But I think he moves pretty well for a guy his size. He's under 6'4", 330 pounds, but he moves pretty well. especially when moving vertically, kind of similar to Ersery as a run blocker. I would say maybe a little bit less power, but I like him a lot still. I know, like I said, I know people have soured on him. I think he'd be fantastic pick on day 2 if you need a right guard. Like I said, I went into this season thinking he was going to be a tackle. I think he's a guard though now. Even though he's got the length, he did not look great at the Senior Bowl as a tackle, but looked really good as a guard. So I think this is one where I'm going to kind of not trust the tape in a way, because I thought he was a good tape at tackle. But I think if you put him at guard, he just has so much potential to be an all-pro guard that I'm willing to lose that positional value to kind of just kick him inside and just let him stick at one position. But we don't, if the Bears sign Trey Smith, you have a right guard. So I don't know if and like I said before, I don't know if you want to play him on the left side. And that lack of position versatility might kind of move him down boards a little bit. But I still like the player.
Yeah, I might be one of those people who's pushing him down boards a little, because I did not like his tape when I first watched it.
Yeah.
And it was largely based on what you referenced, the run blocking. And it was, I looked at him and said, this guy's probably a guard. And maybe I typecast him with that. But it was like, if you're a guard, I need you to be a power run blocker. Like, I need you to be really taking control on run plays. And I didn't like that he wasn't. Now, I watched a few more games after that. I watched some really good pass protection performances. And I've started to kind of warm up to the idea maybe he could stick at tackle, or maybe he's just more like a Steve Avila, who's never really going to be a completely dominant run blocker, but was all through college was a really good pass protector, and I shouldn't say not be a dominant run blocker, but not be a consistent run blocker.
Sure.
And, there's going to be times where he's just not getting to where you need him to be. And that's not going to, the stuff isn't going to open up. But there will be other times where he is just blowing the door wide open. Yeah. If he kind of adopts more of a mentality like that, I can see it more at guard. Or, I don't necessarily think the door is closed on him playing tackle. He does have impressive foot speed for his size. I do end up questioning with him, is his foot, does that make his foot speed good enough? Like, having quick feet for your size and having quick feet are different things.
Right.
And so that's my main question I'm trying to answer the next time I go to his tape is, are his feet just impressive for his size, or are they actually fast enough to play NFL offensive tackle?
Yeah, he's kind of got like stubby legs. So in his kick slide, he doesn't cover as much ground as he wanted to. So I think that's what ultimately moves him inside to guard. Like you said, he's got quick feet, but I think it's literally just he's got short legs.
Yeah,
so,
I think you're right.
Like that's kind of what it is. So I do, like I said, I have him at guard right now, but I think he's a guy who kind of do both. And if a team wanted to play, if the Bears drafted him, I maybe not the Bears, because the Bears don't need a right tackle, but if a team drafted him and played him at right tackle, I would definitely understand. I could understand that for sure. But I'm still going to be high on him. I'm gonna trust my gut on him and kind of keep him in that second round area.
And if there's anything I've learned, I didn't like Steve Avila that much either. I think that's
a perfect comp, because they even got like similar body types. So it makes a lot of sense.
I think that's just a personal preference thing, honestly. Like I like the Emery Jones types. I don't tend to like the Steve Avila, Jonah Savaiinaea types, and something I'm trying to reconcile and understand better. As to, why don't I like that?
Every day.
Yeah, but like it's just everyone has their type,
Yeah.
But let's move it on over to Marcus Mbow out of Purdue, and I know you have some opinions on him, so I'll toss it over to you.
Yeah, I really liked him too. I've kind of soured on him a little bit, just to be honest. I liked my first watch on him. I was like, oh my god, this guy's really good, really talented, and I still think he's good and talented, but I have soured on him slightly. But he's a guy who's a little bit undersized. I think he's like 6'5", but he's probably close to 300 pounds, which is light, obviously, for an offensive lineman. The first time I watched him, I thought he was really, really good with his hands. And then the second time I watched him, his hands were kind of all over the place. So maybe it just depends on the game you watch. But I think he's just, the reason I've soured on him is I think he's just too he doesn't have enough sand in his pants. He's too light to kind of be an NFL offensive lineman, especially a tackle. And I know a lot of people kind of project him to guard. I hate that. I think if you're moving him inside, your best bet is center, which I know a lot of people have him at center. And that's where I have him right now because I don't think he's a tackle. I don't think he can play tackle in the NFL. I think he's kind of a center almost all the way. But the movement skills, I mean, just talking about him as a prospect, the movement skills are really impressive. The guy has really quick feet and can mirror. The hand placement, like I said, is some games is really good, some games all over the place, but there's flashes there of brilliance. And he's a mean motherfucker. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here, but he's mean, and like if that's what you want, like he definitely brings that. But it's just a physics thing. Maybe you can put you'd have to put 15 probably pounds on a minimum in order for me to want him to play right tackle in the NFL. So I'm moving him to center, but I think there's something there. But then you're talking about just a pure projection because he's never played that position, so it's tough. I have soured on him a little bit, but there's definitely something there. There's the makings of an NFL offensive lineman. I just don't know how quickly he gets there.
I agree. I mean, I watched my first game of him today against Ohio State. I was blown away by the pass protection. I was like, this dude's doing this against Ohio State. Like, I mean, I know Purdue's down by like 30 or whatever, but like still, it was just like this guy's playing right there with Jack Sawyer. Like he's doing his job in pass protection. As a run blocker, there were a few big oh no moments on the tape, but
he's completely scheme dependent. You're not gonna gap power. No, you're gonna want to have a heavy outside zone team.
That's exactly what my thought was, because there were some reps where there was a really impressive swivel of the hips, just duck under the defender into the block, and it's a beautiful run block. But I'm with you. He's probably a zone dependent guy, and I'm with you. I don't think he's a guard, but a center, that's interesting. Like it's going to take some time and some work on a team's end, on his end, but like. There's an interesting thought that I could get behind.
At one point, Jordan Reed from ESPN had him as his number 1 ranked center. Now I think he released a new update and he had him at a guard, I think. But I think center makes a lot of sense. I don't know if he'd be the number 1 center for me, but I think it's his best bet.
Yeah. Now, Steve, were there any other guys you wanted to just touch on as maybe like some day 3 options, or guys who just stuck out to you that, you're not quite sure where they belong, but you think they deserve mention?
Yeah, a couple guys. I think this is a really deep offensive tackle class, but a lot of the tackles that we've talked about, we as we discussed, are moving into guard, but I think they're on day 3. Yeah, exactly. So on day 3, there's a couple, and this guy actually, first couple guys actually, I think are day 2 guys. Ozzy Trapilo from Boston College. I really like him a lot. I think he's got good feet. He's got good size. He's 6'7.5", like 320 pounds or something like that, which is a blessing and a curse, I think, for him. But he's got really good movement for his size. The issue is that he's 6'7.5", and sometimes he struggles to sink his hips and anchor against power. And that might just be something he always struggles with because he's not going to get shorter, like he's always just going to get out leveraged a little bit. But the total package is there in terms of he's got decent arm length. He's got, when he does sink his hips, which he has shown some flashes, he can anchor. It's just not consistent. So is he going to get consistent, or is he going to go the opposite direction when he goes to the NFL? But he's got really good feet. He can mirror. He pushes. He's just his wingspan is enough where he can push guys just up the arc. He can defend inside counters. I like him a lot. Kind of on the other end of the spectrum, Anthony Belton from NC State. I really like him. If you want a guy who's mean, this is your guy who's mean. And he's 6'6", 350 pounds, and he just loves to bury dudes. But he's got pretty quick feet for a guy who's 350 pounds. So I like him as well. Jack Nelson from Wisconsin.
I need to watch another game of Belton,
or
another game or 2. I think I watched 2 already, and I saw the mean. Yeah. I just didn't see the foot speed enough, and so I need to take another look at it and look a little closer because that was my concern there. But the meanness was there.
It's kind of like you said. Does he have quick feet, or does he have quick feet for his size?
Right. Yeah.
And it might just have quick feet for his size. But I think there's something there. I think he probably does go in the 3rd round somewhere. Jack Nelson from Wisconsin. This guy's just a good football player. I don't know if he's a tackle. Don't know if he's a guard. But draft him on day 3, and he's probably going to have a good 6-7 year career. And then the guy who I was just watching recently, Jalen Travis from Iowa State, he's another guy who's 6'7.5", 345 pounds. And the guy can move for a guy who's that big. So there's a bunch of other stuff that's rough around the edges, but if you're just looking for a day 3 guy who's big and athletic, I would definitely take a flyer on him.
Yeah, I've been meaning to get to him, so I'll have to check that out.
Very stiff hips.
Yeah.
Pretty stiff hips, but there's enough there when he's moving, moving forward in the run game and just his overall athleticism and size.
Right.
I'm willing to take a flyer on day 3.
All right. Well, folks, make sure if you're on Twitter, you're going and following at CFC Bears. Steve, is there anywhere else podcast related or anything where people can find you?
Well, Chicago Football Connection podcast on YouTube. We're still putting out content there, and then otherwise, all my draft stuff's on tapsports.com. So make sure to check it out there. We're going to be writing a ton of articles. Once the combine's done in a couple of weeks, we're going to be really pounding them out. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, make sure to stay on it. And for you guys who are still with us, we will be back within the next 5 minutes for our interior offensive line episode. So stick around and make sure to jump in the comments with us. But thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you soon.